Welcome to the deep dive. You know, sometimes it feels like the line between genuine and, well, manipulative can get really blurry, especially when you throw in a heavy dose of media attention and controversy.
Yeah, definitely.
Today, we're diving deep into the story of Jodi Arias, someone whose case had everyone wondering, was she a victim or a mastermind?
It's one of those cases that really makes you question everything you think you know about human behavior. You want to categorize people.
Right.
But real life is so much more complicated.
Exactly. We've got stacks of articles, court documents, psychological reports, and it's honestly a wild ride.
Oh, yeah.
The deeper you go, the more you start questioning everything.
It's fascinating, really.
But first, let's back up a bit. Who were Jodi and Travis, and what brought them together?
Let's start with Jodi Arias. Born in California in 1980, from what we can gather, her early life was pretty rough. Reports of parental abuse, instability. She did eventually earn her GED and kind of dabbled in photography while working various jobs. Then, in September 2006, she met Travis Alexander at a work conference in Vegas.
Vegas, huh? What about Travis?
Also a California native, but his life seemed, more charmed. You know, he had this charisma, strong Mormon faith, found success as a motivational speaker and salesman.
So, two very different paths crossing in the City of Lights. Sounds like the start of a whirlwind romance.
It was. They were instantly drawn to each other, and despite all their differences, they started this passionate, long-distance relationship. Travis, being a devout Mormon, was hesitant at first.
Yeah, makes sense.
But then Jodi converted to Mormonism, so that seemingly solidified their connection. For a while, anyway.
Converting for him is a big step. Some would say it shows the depth of her feelings.
Yeah, some might see it that way. Others see it as a red flag, right? Remember, we're trying to figure out, is this genuine devotion or calculated manipulation?
Right. It could be either.
Exactly. It all comes down to perspective. But their relationship, it wasn't all sunshine and roses, far from it. Friends and family described it as volatile. Some even used words like obsessive when talking about Jodi.
Oh.
There were definitely some troubling patterns in her behavior. She'd show up unannounced at his house, even after he asked her not to.
Unannounced?
And it gets worse. Reports of her slashing his tires, sending threatening emails.
That's more than a little possessive. That's pretty serious. They still kept seeing each other after all that.
It's complicated. They actually broke up after about 5 months. Travis ended it, but then they continued to have a sexual relationship.
Oh, okay, I see.
Which, as you can imagine, didn't exactly help the situation. Jodi moved to Mesa, Arizona to be closer to him.
After they broke up. Wow, that doesn't sound like the healthiest way to cope.
Right, and being closer didn't help. The stalking escalated. Reports say she would sneak into his house through the doggy door.
Through a doggy door. Seriously.
Yeah, really fueling the anxieties of those who are already concerned about her. I mean, imagine coming home and finding out your ex has been sneaking in.
That would be super creepy.
Yeah.
So we have a love triangle, a ton of secrecy, obsession, anger, and then June 4, 2008, everything changed.
Yeah, Travis Alexander was found dead in his shower.
Oh, boy.
It was brutal. He'd been stabbed 27 times, his throat was slashed, he had a gunshot wound to the head.
27 times. That wasn't just an argument. It's horrific.
Absolutely. And suspicion, well, it immediately fell on Jodi Arias. She had the history, the volatile relationship. It was actually his friends who found him. They hadn't heard from him in days.
Oh, that's awful.
Yeah.
So police have their prime suspect. What was her response when they questioned her?
Well, she gave a few different stories. At first, she claimed self-defense, said Travis had been abusive. Then she switched it up, claimed 2 intruders broke in and killed him.
Changing her story multiple times, that doesn't really scream innocent, does it?
No, not really. It raised even more red flags.
So, a web of lies. Did she ever confess?
She did, but it took 2 years. Finally, in 2010, she admitted to killing Travis, but still maintained it was self-defense.
Even in her confession, she's still trying to play the victim.
Exactly, trying to control the narrative.
Yeah.
But would the evidence support her claims? Well, that's what the trial aimed to find out, and it became a national sensation. Media scrutiny was intense. The public was completely captivated.
It was a media circus, right? We actually have some CNN transcripts that detail just how crazy things were in the courtroom.
It was a very charged atmosphere, yeah.
Okay.
There was Jodi, often emotional, her family reacting, gasps from the gallery when the graphic photos were shown. captivating and unsettling.
Okay, so her testimony, she was on the stand for 19 days.
19 days.
What did she reveal during that time?
It was a wild ride. The most intimate details of their relationship, often very graphic, were laid out for everyone to hear. The prosecution even played a recorded phone call between them. Let's just say it wasn't exactly PG rated.
Whoa, an X-rated phone call in court. That's a bold move. What were they trying to do?
They wanted to paint her as the aggressor, the one using sex and manipulation to control Travis, dismantle that victim narrative she was building.
Makes sense. Did her defense team try to counter that?
Absolutely. They brought in psychologists who argued that she suffered from PTSD and borderline personality disorder, claiming it all stemmed from abuse by Travis.
For those who might not know, can you quickly explain borderline personality disorder and how it's relevant here?
Sure, borderline personality disorder is a complex mental health condition. It involves things like intense emotional swings, unstable relationships, a distorted self-image, and impulsive behavior.
Okay, so basically the defense was saying her actions, while extreme, were a result of mental illness and years of abuse.
Exactly. So you have this battle of narratives, right? A cold-blooded manipulator versus a victim pushed to the edge. But what about the actual evidence? Did it support either side?
Well, there's one piece that turned out to be crucial. Do you remember that damaged digital camera they found in Travis's washing machine?
Yeah, vaguely.
Well, investigators were able to recover some pictures from it, and they changed everything.
How so?
The photos showed Jodi and Travis together on the day of the murder in pretty compromising positions. And most importantly, there was a picture of Travis lying on the bathroom floor, covered in blood.
So even though the camera was damaged, it gave a visual timeline, placing her there, contradicting her story.
Exactly. Those photos became a key piece of evidence, really damaging her credibility.
Hmm.
And then there was the murder weapon.
Did they ever find it?
No, but they did find a .25 caliber shell casing at the crime scene. And a few weeks before the murder, a .25 caliber gun went missing from Jodi's grandparents' house. A missing gun, same caliber as the shell casing. That doesn't sound like a coincidence. It seems like the evidence was really stacking up against her. But would it be enough to convince the jury?
That was the big question. They had to weigh the narratives, the expert opinions, and all the physical evidence. It took them 15 hours of deliberation to reach a verdict.
And that verdict was?
Guilty. First-degree murder. A unanimous decision.
Welcome back to the deep dive. Before the break, we were talking about Jodi Arias' life sentence and how her story takes a kind of, well, unexpected turn after that.
Yeah, it's pretty bizarre. You don't exactly expect a convicted murderer to, maintain this public persona, let alone kind of thrive in the spotlight from prison.
It's almost as if she's created this celebrity inmate brand. How did she even manage to do that?
Well, for one, she started selling her artwork online.
Wait, seriously?
Yeah, and some pieces have sold for over $2,000.
Wow, that's a lot for prison art.
Mhm.
She's allowed to profit from that while serving a life sentence. Doesn't that seem, I don't know, ethically questionable?
It definitely raises some eyebrows. Critics say she's profiting off of, her notoriety, capitalizing on the very crime that landed her in prison.
I can see why people would be upset about that. It's almost like she's turning her incarceration into a business.
It's a really complex issue. There are arguments on both sides. Some say, well, she has a right to express herself creatively, even in prison. But then others question the fairness of a convicted killer profiting from their crimes.
And it's not just the art, right? You
Mhm.
mentioned she's managed to cultivate this whole following. How is that even possible from prison?
It's the age of social media. Even though she doesn't have direct access to the internet, she has supporters who manage her accounts, share her messages, that sort of thing.
So even locked up, she can still connect with the public, control her narrative to a certain extent. It's fascinating and a little creepy at the same time.
Totally agree. And that public fascination with her, it doesn't seem to be fading. We've seen countless documentaries, articles, online forums dedicated to her case. People are still debating her guilt, her motives. It's like a national obsession.
It's pretty amazing a case from 2008 still holding this much attention. Why do you think people are so captivated by Jodi Arias?
I think it's a few things, really. You have the inherent drama of a love triangle gone wrong, a brutal murder, a defendant who keeps changing her story. It's like a real-life soap opera.
And there's the mystery, right? Even with the conviction, there are still those lingering questions. Did she act in self-defense like she claimed? Or was it cold-blooded revenge?
Exactly. That ambiguity keeps people guessing, trying to solve the puzzle. We love a good mystery.
And maybe it goes deeper than that, you know? I think people are drawn to stories that make them question their understanding of human nature.
Oh, absolutely. Jodi Arias challenges that tendency we have to see people as simply good or bad. Her case forces us to confront those darker impulses, the potential for violence that exists even in seemingly ordinary people.
It also highlights the flaws in the justice system. There were heated debates about the evidence, the expert testimony, how much influence the media had on the trial.
It became a real focal point for conversations about fairness and transparency in the legal process, especially when you have this level of public interest.
And then there's the psychological aspect. You had experts offering conflicting opinions about her mental state. Was she truly suffering from PTSD and borderline personality disorder like her defense argued? Or was it all an act to avoid responsibility?
Those questions are still debated today. So after looking at all of this, where do you land? Do you see Jodi Arias as a master manipulator who gamed the system? Or as a victim driven to a breaking point?
It's not that simple, is it?
It really isn't. The Jodi Arias case isn't about finding a neat answer. It's about confronting the complexities of human behavior, the limits of the justice system, the power of perception. It's messy, it's uncomfortable, and it's thought-provoking.
And that's what makes it so fascinating. Even with a conviction, her story forces us to challenge our assumptions, to face those uncomfortable truths.
Exactly. And to add to the intrigue, there's the whole, the marriage proposals she's gotten while in prison.
Wait, what? Marriage
Oh,
proposals?
yeah, tons of them. And there are even whispers about her wanting a jailhouse wedding, maybe even having kids someday.
A jailhouse wedding. Seriously. But she's not allowed conjugal visits, right?
Nope, not in her prison. So, how she plans on making any of that happen is a total mystery.
It's like she's living in a fantasy world where her conviction doesn't actually have any real-world consequences.
It's a really hard disconnect to wrap your head around. On one hand, she's a convicted murderer, life sentence. On the other, she's selling art, getting marriage proposals, dreaming of a family.
It's like she's leading this double life, you know?
Mm.
One bound by prison walls, the other fueled by the attention of the outside world.
And that's the point, isn't it? Jodi Arias has turned her incarceration into this bizarre performance, and people can't look away.
It really goes to show, even in prison, you can still manipulate perceptions, build a following, create controversy.
It's a testament to the power of personality, the intrigue of the taboo, and our never-ending fascination with the unusual.
This case is like opening Pandora's box. It raises questions about guilt, innocence, manipulation, the human capacity for both good and evil.
And as we dig deeper into the aftermath, the ethical questions surrounding her activities, the unanswered questions that linger, you're left with this feeling, this unease.
It sticks with you, even after the gavel drops and the headlines fade. But unfortunately, that's all the time we have for this segment. When we come back, we'll be wrapping up our deep dive into the Jodi Arias case and exploring a fascinating what-if scenario. What if the key piece of evidence, those photos from the damaged camera, had never been found? Stick with us. Welcome back to the deep dive. We've been really getting into the Jodi Arias case, from the passionate start to the brutal ending and that, well, bizarre aftermath that still fascinates and disturbs. Before we went away, we were pondering a question. What if those photos from the damaged camera, that visual evidence, had never been recovered? How would that have changed things?
It's a huge what if, right? I mean, those pictures were a direct link to that day, showing us what led to Travis's death. They placed Jodi there, contradicted her alibi, and really countered all those shifting stories she told.
Without them, could the prosecution have built such a strong case? Or would her self-defense claims have held up better?
It's hard to say for sure. The prosecution relied on a lot of circumstantial evidence and pointing out all the inconsistencies in Jodi's accounts, but those photos, they were proof. They were the foundation of their whole argument.
It makes you think about how much those images swayed public opinion, too. The media was all over this case, dissecting every detail, every new development. Do you think that constant flood of information, those graphic crime scene photos, did it affect the jury's perception of Jodi?
The media's impact on these big trials is tricky. Transparency is essential. The public deserves to know what's happening, but too much attention can turn it into a circus, and that's not fair to the defendant.
Yeah, finding that balance is tough. In this case, it was a media frenzy. You had the attractive defendant, the tragic victim, all those salacious details, the conflicting stories. It was made for headlines.
Exactly. And it brings up that question of public opinion influencing the legal system. Did the jury, even though they're supposed to be impartial, did they feel that pressure? It's impossible to know for sure, but it's a valid point.
Let's switch gears a bit and talk about Jodi now. Life in prison, selling art, those marriage proposals. It's a strange mix.
Yeah, and the fact that she can make money, get attention from behind bars, it keeps the debate going. Some people think she's using the system, making a profit off of being infamous.
Others might argue she's just exercising her rights, expressing herself, connecting with supporters.
And that's the dilemma, isn't it? Where's the line? What rights should someone like her have? Should she profit from art, knowing that some buyers might be drawn to it because of her crime? There are no easy answers here.
And it just adds to the fascination with her. Years later, she's still an enigma, someone who intrigues and repels people at the same time.
Her case is like a study in manipulation, a warning about obsession, a testament to the power of a good story. Even with the guilty verdict, there are still unanswered questions, those lingering doubts. We might never truly understand what drove her.
It's a case that makes you think, that forces you to confront the complexities of human nature, the legal system, how the media shapes what we believe. So, after diving deep into Jodi Arias, what are your final thoughts? Master manipulator, victim pushed to the edge.
It's a question each of us has to answer for ourselves, honestly. We have the evidence, the arguments, but the truth, like the human heart, it remains a mystery.
A chilling and thought-provoking end to a case that keeps us fascinated and disturbed. But that's all the time we have for today. If you want to learn more about this, about criminal behavior, or how the justice system works, we've got resources linked in the show notes. Thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive.